Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Hey, Craig.
Ooh, I don't have a song. So I had.
Wait, I thought you were making a song.
No, I have put effort into it, but it's a lot hard. It's not that easy. I am not a musician.
Oh, come on.
I can play 4 chords on a guitar. I've been trying to, mess with GarageBand. I'm figuring it out, but I'm not like musically inclined, so it's not the easiest thing in the world.
But I mean, let's be real. You've got nothing but time on your hands between potty training a toddler and getting your basement fixed and preparing for the snowpocalypse that is apparently on its way to us. I mean, come on. Like, can't you just write a stupid song?
Oh yeah, and recording this podcast and writing for Kook Center and a full-time job. I don't know, man.
What?
Plus, I have to spend time with my PlayStation 5. I can't.
Yeah. I love how you slid that in there.
Yeah.
My PlayStation 5. I got one of those,
Well, I have a PlayStation 5, and this is Podcast versus Everyone. I'm Craig Powers. I'm currently playing God of War, which is a PS4 game. Thanks, Sherwood, for that recommendation.
On a PlayStation 5, in case we missed that.
It loads faster on the PlayStation 5.
Ooh.
With me is Jeff Newser, who does not have a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox X, whatever the hell the Xbox One is called.
Nope, I do not have one of those yet. I will at some point. Probably about the time they come out with NCAA 24 or whatever it's going to be by the time it comes out. Or college. I guess they're going to call it college football, apparently.
Yeah.
Because the
college
NCAA
football.
They don't want anything to do with it, but all the schools will gladly take that money, especially right about now, man. They're all like, hey, you want to pay us some money?
Can we do it right now?
To be in a video.
NCAA 21?
Can you give us a down payment on college football 24? Maybe
the players
spread
are like,
those.
Can we get our money for it?
Yeah. I know. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm excited about that. I'm super excited about that. I will be 60 years old and still be super excited about college football. A college football game on my video game console. So
I can't wait for our generation, because we were pretty much, you're obviously a little bit older than me, but still, like, we were like the first kind of console generation people, to where we're, as adults, still just, it used to, when we were growing up, like, it was like kids that played the console games.
Absolutely.
And then now it's a lot of the games are geared towards adults because we're adults and we're playing,
because we have the money.
So.
We're the ones with the money. Like, ain't no kids out there dropping $500 on a PS5.
Even Animal Crossing was primarily an adult. Like, it was adults playing that game.
It's supposed to be for kids, and the adults were just like, no, I'm playing that. Yeah.
Like, they're gonna analyze this economy.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna manipulate it and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so we talked about how we need to be a little succinct in this podcast because we have a lot to talk about.
We're off to a great damn start.
We're
4
off
minutes,
to a great start,
and we haven't talked about anything except something that wasn't on the script. So good job, new sir. This is how my classes get off track. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, we got to read something in class today. The kid's like, no, just go ahead, keep talking about whatever that thing is that's totally unrelated to what we're supposed to be learning today.
Well,
I'm like, okay, sure, no problem.
Yeah, let's just talk about that. That's why Mr. Newser has a podcast. Everyone loves tangents on podcasts. It's what they're made for.
Yeah.
So tangentially, from what we're talking about, maybe we should talk about WSU men's basketball.
Yeah, that's tangentially related, right?
To our lives. So, like all sports last week, everything started out gravy. We had the greatest like 3 days of or maybe 2 days of like WSU sports ever. And part of that was the men's basketball team getting their first win at Matthew Knight Arena, and the first win at Oregon since 2009, which was a great feeling. It was good, and it truly it felt like it kind of had to happen after they started so well, and after they kind of held the lead for most of the game. You were just like, please, please, please hang on to this thing. And after Duarte went out and all that stuff, of course, we had our own guys go out too. But yeah, wild game. Not a pretty game, Jeff.
Yeah, one of the most
game.
Unwatchable games you could ever sit down and see. I'm just glad we won, so that I got the payoff of that. But that was an abomination of officiating, only to be exceeded by the abomination of officiating 2 days later. But we'll get to that in a sec. Just like totally crazy. The game was 2.5 hours in regulation, and there were no like extended stoppages or anything. Like it wasn't like, somebody broke their leg and it took 10 minutes to get them off the court. Like it was.
Well, there was someone turned their ankle. I guess it took like 5 minutes.
Yeah, Duarte turned his ankle, but I think they went to commercial, and it wasn't like, I don't know, but certainly not enough to get to have
2.5 hours.
2.5 hour game. That was all because there were 50 some fouls, right? 50,
yes,
50 fouls, 52 fouls, something like that, which is absolutely just bananas. It was 52 fouls. That's what it was. 28 fouls on Oregon, 24 fouls on us. Remarkably, only 3 players ended up disqualified with all those fouls.
Yeah, they spread them out pretty well.
Yeah, which I think is not that's not a good thing. I guess, I don't know. It's these officials are just like, it's crazy, man. Like nobody watches these games to watch you call fouls, and you and I have lamented this, over and over and over again about how especially our big men pick up such ticky-tack fouls all over the place. And it's not just our big men. It's just big men in general, right? Because there's tons of contact. They're, the last line of defense before the rim. They're more likely to make contact with other players. But it's like, I don't know, man. John Gassaway, so our esteemed former basketball prospectus colleague and now ESPN Plus insider guy, has long been on the train to eliminating disqualifications, and I think I'm kind of getting on board with that. Like, yeah. I don't know. I don't know, if not eliminate them altogether, maybe make it 6. Like, I don't know, man. It's just the quality of the game suffers because of foul trouble. And why is there foul trouble? Because somebody somewhere arbitrarily decided that 5 was going to be the limit. Well, why? Why is 5 the limit? Like, what? Like, is there something magical about 5? It's a round number. I think that's probably it, right? And so it's like so many games. Some of your best players end up leaving because they're in foul trouble because they get 2 fouls, right? Ken Pom even has a stat on his page to measure how often a coach basically lets it ride with 2 fouls, right? Like how often does he play players with 2 fouls? And it's like, why is that shouldn't be a thing. I understand the intent of the rule is to keep somebody from just flagrantly beating the crap out of people. But it's like, why? I don't know, man.
You can still have a penalty beyond. Yeah. And what Gassaway advocates, is like a penalty beyond something different. So like, 10 fouls is, like if you get over 6 fouls, then you have to, it's like free throws automatic or something, something like 2 shots in the ball type situation. Right. So that like, but you can still gamble with the player if you want, or, maybe not something that harsh, but it has to be something appropriately harsh so that players don't do that. Cause otherwise you could just find the shack on the other team and just hack the crap out of them.
Yep.
But yeah, it was so crazy. It was just so incongruent, the game, with, DJ Rodman, got injured. Another guy on outside of Duarte on Oregon got injured. So it was just combine the injuries with the fouls, and so it was just nuts. And Jackson fouls out pretty early because of that. WSU's riding for a while without him. You saw Eugene Omoyuri had missed about the last minute. I think he had to sit because he fouled out when Oregon's trying to make a comeback, and so you got the best offensive player for one of the teams is out. Is out of the game. It's just it's silly, and but let's talk about the positives.
We won the game, so I guess let's.
We won the game largely because of 3-point shooting. And a surprise, like two things: 3-point shooting and a surprising number of turnovers from Oregon. Like super surprising. Oregon just doesn't turn the ball over much, and they turned it over 16 times, 23% of the time, which is about 9% higher than they were running before. So you're talking probably a couple three or four more turnovers than they usually do, and it was really all in the first half, and kind of let WSU build a little bit of a lead early on because Oregon was just turning it over and WSU was hitting a bunch of threes.
Yeah, that definitely is not the script that you would have written beforehand to have it be believable. But it was great. I mean, just to be bombing in threes all over the place, and
from Jazz and from DJ Rodman, who had a great weekend shooting the ball, and and then just to start off like that, just to Bonton had 2 where he got it reviewed and foot on the line. Otherwise, he would have had even more.
I know.
But yeah, he started out with that with DJ hit 3 in the first couple minutes, really, and then Bonton had a long 2, and then I put it in. So they were just. It's fun to obviously it's so much more fun when shots are going down. But then and throughout the game, really, it was Bonton that had a excellent game, best player on the floor type game.
Yep.
And it's nice to see when the shots are falling for him, and he's just making good plays, and playing really good defense too. I got to give him credit on that too. Just to see how well things are going. It was nice to see him continue a stretch that he's had, and really, like, that's why they won. Bonton's play, and of course he had the assist on one of the dunks of the year as well, so that was pretty fun.
I woke up my children, multiple children were like, "Dad, are you okay?" And I thought I was actually being really quiet because I was watching the end of the game in bed, just kind of laying down, and it happened, and I kind of like threw my covers off, and Sarah hadn't come upstairs yet, so I was like. I was kind of in there by myself. I snuggled under the covers nice and warm, and then like flung the covers off and tried to be quiet and ended up kind of stomping around the room louder than I thought I was. Because the kids are like, kids come in, "Dad, are you okay? Dad, you woke us up. Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm very okay. That was awesome." And they're like, "Why are you stomping around?" And I'm like, "You don't understand. This was amazing." Anyway, so I said, "Do you want to see it?" I'll look it up on Twitter. You can see the dunk, But, we've been waiting all year for that, man. Like, we're like, what, I don't think there are very many of us that kind of didn't think that was in there, right? So, like, why don't they ever run the play where you just throw it up there and let, FA go get it? And they finally did. And he didn't even really, it's not like it was a pinpoint pass. He just kind of put it in the vicinity, and FA killed a man.
Yeah. That's what you get for trying to block the shot.
Yeah, don't ever try,
in a
kid.
Poster now.
That's the lesson. Don't ever try.
I'm forgetting who it was. Was it Figueroa that was trying to block the shot? I can't remember. Oh no, it's Chandler Lawson, I want to say. Yeah. So he just his arm stretched out, trying to do its best. Not happening.
Nope.
One of a few posters Noah had, or FA had this weekend. It was funny. He only had 4 points, but he definitely had the most memorable bucket.
Yeah, he was third from the bottom on the team in scoring, but had the big dunk.
So thanks to all the fouls, like the last 10 minutes of the game was pretty ugly. Yeah. I think WSU hit 2 shots, like 2 Isaac Bonton like crazy shots, and then it was a lot of free throws and a lot of hanging on and hoping for dear life. One thing that was surprising and kind of disappointing in that game was the interior defense.
Yeah.
That given Oregon's lack of size
and the rebounding.
And the rebounding.
So defensive
things. Those are 2 things that you would hope. Like we said, the script that was written, or the script that if you would have written the script of how they won, you would not have believed it. Like that, like, oh, you're taking like the least likely things. WSU hits a bunch of threes and Oregon turns the ball over a bunch. Like, no, that's not going to happen. And WSU shoots more free throws, which I mean, definitely you thought could have happened that one, but yeah, it's just they gave up 19 to 38 on twos. Gave up 48% on the defensive glass, so giving up almost every other miss, giving up an offensive rebound, which is what they had just done to UW. So that was pretty disappointing, especially given, I mean, Oregon was not a great offensive rebounding team.
Nope.
Coming in.
Nope.
They were a good defensive rebounding team, but not offensive rebounding. So it was weird that if Figueroa and Omayuri, really the 2 guys that did most of the work. So they were able to, 2 6'6" guys were really to get around our tall trees and get a bunch of rebounds. So that was worrisome, but you know, it's nice to get a win when all that crap isn't, when your best things aren't working. It kind of felt like this team was so bad offensively at times that like you had to have those things work, like rebounding and interior defense, to even have a shot against a team like Oregon. But you know, sometimes things just work out strangely, and that happened.
They did a really good job in the second half of getting into the interior. I remember in the first half, I was sort of like, you know, at some point they've got to get into the paint. They've got to get to the rim, like something. You know, that first half, they were hitting threes all over the place, but it really felt a lot to me like those old Ernie Kent fool's gold type games, right? Where it's like, okay, we're gonna shoot, you know, 33s in the game, and we're gonna go, you know, 9 of 15 in the first half, and it's like, oh well, you know, we're hitting all these threes, let's just keep going, you know. And then at some point you're not hitting all those threes anymore, and it starts to cool down. And I think what I loved was that, you know, whatever adjustment they made definitely allowed them to attack more in the paint, led to a lot of the fouls. You know, Oregon really had to change the way they were playing, you know, largely because of the way the officials were calling the game, you know, because they had so many guys in foul trouble. They really had to maybe not be nearly as aggressive on defense, and the Cougars did, I thought, a great job of taking advantage of that, and you know, getting into the paint and getting into spots where they could score near the basket, where in the first half they really couldn't penetrate Oregon's defense at all, which wasn't a huge shock. You know, really good defense. They've got a whole bunch of dudes who play basically like amoeba style. I mean, they got a whole bunch of similarly sized guys who can switch like crazy and just deny. And so, you know, to adjust in the second half to be able to attack that in a little bit better way and put Oregon on their heels a bit, was really cool to see. So yeah, super fun game because of the outcome. Not real gorgeous to watch, but so many encouraging things. And all I could think of at the end of the game was, please don't ruin these good vibes by losing to Oregon State on Saturday. And yeah.
I mean, you wanted to take an ugly game. Not as many fouls, but that's because
they were only calling fouls.
They were
on
only
one
called
team.
on one team. Yeah, and it says, and you can't even say it was like WSU fouling to try to catch up at the end, because Oregon State was fouling a bunch at the end because they had a bunch of fouls to give, and they had Warith Alatishe making some of the 2 of the dumbest fouls I've ever seen. Like at the end of the game, giving WSU a chance. Like,
yeah,
God, that was so dumb. But anyway, so that Oregon State called for 15 fouls in this game, which fine. I would love if teams were only called for 15 fouls every game, you know.
Yeah.
WSU called for 26.
Yeah.
And this is where foul trouble killed them. FA only played 25 minutes. Deshaun only played 17. He wasn't in foul trouble, of course. He got hurt. But you lose, you know, that front line by the end of the game, like, you know, FA didn't foul out until the end, but he had to miss large amounts of time. Brant Chatfield played 3 minutes in this game. I don't think they were expecting to use him in Pac-12 play at all. So they were having to go I think they eventually decided to go really small, and that negates kind of your advantage when you have these two players, FA and Deshaun, who have been playing so well and playing so well. And Oregon State's really a team that they could excel against, and they're missing time for injury and for foul trouble. That was rough. Plus, you had Noah in foul trouble. And then, unfortunately, there wasn't everyone was in foul trouble. It was still like just Oregon State was shooting a bunch of free throws, especially in the second half, and some of them were just were just ridiculous. Like it was like one of the fouls they called for a seal out on FA, which is totally like fine. Like he was sealing out a guy, you know, from the paint. So either Bonton had the chance for an open three or a drive, and players do that every time, like every play down.
Yep.
And just some of the offensive fouls were just silly, and it was so frustrating to watch down the stretch, and just the refs kind of take over the game and kill WSU's chances. It was a frustrating game to watch for sure. And then of course, after all Bonton, all the good he has been doing for most of Pac-12 play, you know, kind of he threw out a clunker again, and that was a bummer.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of now. Full disclosure, I didn't watch much of the game because I was out and about all day Saturday doing family type stuff. So I listened to a lot of it on the radio. Matt Chazanow, unlike his predecessor, does not talk much about fouls or bad calls or anything like that. To his credit, I think. So that's great. But I was following also on Slack, and I also kind of saw the box score, the stats as it was running, and it was just like, oh wow, you know, this foul situation is terrible. And you know, it reminds me of, to some degree, both of these games together reminds me of, you know, back in the day they used to talk about how Pac-10 teams couldn't be successful in the NCAA tournament because as soon as they got there, everybody else in the country is reffing a different game than what the Pac-10 was reffing. And the Pac-10 was seen as a fairly soft league where, you know, more fouls were called, and, you know, it's just like guys weren't as tough. And so you put them in a game where all of a sudden now maybe not all those fouls are getting called and they're letting more contact go. You can bully a Pac-10 team, right? Now, whether that was true or not, I don't know. I don't have any data to support whether, you know, more fouls are being called or less fouls or whatever. But I do know when I watch a game like this, these two games, that's what it reminds me of. Is this idea like, holy crap, why so many calls, and why, like, it just, it's frustrating. And they're in love with making offensive foul calls. You know, it's like any chance they get, they want to call an offensive foul. And they anticipate, and they just, it's like, I talk about like Pac-12 football referees, and I say that the biggest problem with their officiating is that they look for reasons to make a call rather than looking for reasons to not make a call. And it's like basketball right now is the exact same way. It's like you can look at a thing and say, okay, like, did he smack his arm on a shot? Okay, fine. Was there a little bit of contact? Was the screen moving a little bit? Was there, like, I mean, I mean, and they'll do makeup calls with fouls. Like Deshaun Jackson got one of those against UW. I know you remember that. Like he got called for a moving screen that's like 1,000 other screens that everybody sets, except there was a questionable call the previous possession for Washington, and so they smacked Deshaun Jackson with, I think at the time was his third foul. But it was like, okay, well, that's going to be a problem at some point because he just can't give away fouls, right? FA doesn't block any more shots because he's so afraid of making contact with anybody. He doesn't even try anymore.
Yeah, he had one really nice one against Oregon State. It was his first one he had. I think they said in like 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, he barely tries because he's so afraid of making any contact.
Yeah, and that's that's part of the interior defense. I will say, like, just looking straight at the 2-point percentage against Oregon State is kind of misleading when you're looking at interior defense. Oregon State was hitting a ton of mid-range shots. Jared Lucas, who was shooting 28% on 2-point jumpers, hit 3 of 4, and they were all difficult ones in this game. Very frustrating. Alatiche was hitting mid-range shots. Like, they were hitting a bunch of mid-range shots. I think Thompson is really the only guy that was kind of getting inside at the end. They had him bogged down, I think, until Noah took a knock on his ankle. I think that hurt his defense and probably just being tired. And then Ethan Thompson they worked him in down low, obviously on purpose, and he was able to, put up 12 points in a hurry there at the end. Free throws helped too.
Well, and they also only took 17 2-pointers in the second half. Yeah, 17 2-pointers, 6 3-pointers, and 21 free throw attempts.
21 free throws.
21 free throw attempts. By the way, Kyle Smith, I don't know if you caught this. Kyle Smith after the game kind of went on a little bit of a rant about the officiating without
well done.
Without going on a rant about the officiating. Like that's a man who doesn't want a fine or censure from the Pac-12, but he mentioned he said the analytics point to, I can't remember exactly the quote, but basically said he said go ahead.
He said that I believe he said Oregon State is like 303rd in the country in like not getting fouls called, which means that's bad, that means they get more. They like basically foul more than most teams in the country, like almost every team in the country.
The quote was basically said, hey, the analytics say that Oregon State fouls a lot, and so wow, they must have just had a really good game of not fouling, which was sort of hilarious. And then he talked about the officials. He's like, well, those guys are Final Four officials, so obviously it wasn't them. So I guess we need to look at ourselves and figure out how to do this differently. Of course, it was 100% tongue in cheek, but Oregon State, as of now, I don't know what it was going to the game, but as of now, 284th in putting their opponent on the line. In an average game, average game, they put their opponent on the line 37%. So the ratio of free throw attempts to field goal attempts is 37%. Okay,
37 to 100. Just say like 37 free throws for every 100 field goal attempts.
That's a good way to put it. Okay, so in that game, it was 18. It was half of their average, right?
And WSU was actually making free throws. Ugh.
Yeah, like half of their average, and then you flip it over. Okay, so by the way, 18, pretty much by far the lowest they allowed in the whole season. The next closest was actually the week before against USC. It was 21.5. Okay, and then the next lowest above that is 24. So really, really rare for them, and the rest of their games are all over 28. So they've had 4 games under 28 and everything else over 28, and we're at 18, right? Well, then you flip it around and you look at them. Their free throw rate was 72. 7-2. Now, they are one of the better teams in the Pac-12 at getting to the free throw line on offense, but still an average game is 36 free throw attempts per 100 field goal attempts.
Like, if you look at league play only, like, even with this WSU game where they shot a ton of free throws and WSU shot hardly any, they're 11th in free throw rate allowed, 39 per 100 in Pac-12 play against like opponents, because they had a pretty, they're pretty weak non-con like WSU. Really only a couple games, but then they're only 6th, just about average like would be the national average, but with 32 free throws per 100. So they were just like, if you take that WSU game out, like they would be a huge disparity in the free throws they shoot and the free throws they allow, like a negative disparity in across the board. And it happened in the Colorado game they just played on Monday. They shot 16 free throws, and then so 16 out of 30. Let's see, so 16 against 55 shots. Jeff, if you want to do the math on that, and then 16 of 55, and then that's against Colorado shot 21 of 52. So Colorado just slightly higher, which is normal for Oregon State. The other team shoots a little bit more free throws than they do. But it totally flipped the other way for WSU. And WSU is not typically a team that gives up a ton of free throws.
Nope.
Like it's not something they do. During conference play, I mean, now it's up higher. They definitely shoot fewer than they give up. But overall in the season, they shoot a lot more than they allow. So it's so frustrating. Like it like Kyle said, like, so I guess they were just playing differently that game.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's to have that big of a disparity is just, it's unfortunate. It's disheartening. It'll drive a coach nuts. It was obvious that it had driven Kyle Smith crazy.
Well, and you know, you saw John, friend of the pod, John Andershek, tweet just, you know, the swearing emoji, three swearing emojis.
After the game. Nothing else, just that.
Nothing else. Yeah. Like, and they're not saying that because they're frustrated they lost, like, because they're always going to be mad about a loss. But when he's putting something like that, you know, he's mad for a reason. Yeah. Like it's just
it's just such a
he even pointed out there was a clock error on the final intentional miss where WSU actually had somehow, some way had a chance to tie or win the game at the end of the game there, where the clock was started about 0.4 too early, which really in the end could have made the final shot, a 3-pointer from DJ Rodman, count. If he would have made it, that would have been one hell of a thing. And
for people who don't know, by the way, the refs are the ones who start the clock. That is not home cooking. That is so the refs. Some people may have noticed they wear a little black box on their hip, and that's what that is. There's a button on there to ensure that the clock starts when it's supposed to start. So
they started it when the ball hit the rim,
apparently,
and it's supposed to start when it hits the player's hand.
So one of the officials did that. It wasn't somebody at Oregon State. It wasn't some Homer clock operator. It was one of the officials who started the clock early. So, yeah,
which, lucky for them,
it didn't
DJ
go
Rodman missed.
Yeah,
it was one hell of a play though. Noah ripped the ball out of the OSU player's hand and ended up with Vova. Vova spotted DJ, and his internal clock was right. You know, there should have been enough time, but.
Yeah. It's just such a bummer. The whole thing was a bummer, man. It's like you come off that win against Oregon.
FA had a great, in what was like garbage time essentially, but had a great poster of Alatishe to put him within 3 at the end there, right before he fouled out because he had to take a foul to extend the game, but. Yeah, it was a bummer. Just after you come after that huge win, you're playing a team that you've already beaten at home. You're just hoping you can get that win. And like I wrote in both the previews of Oregon State this year, the teams are so close that it just takes 1 or 2 factors to go one way that to flip the game. And this took, WSU won most other factors. It took the flipping of free throws in such a direction to Oregon State, and the fouls and foul trouble and all that So because Oregon State didn't have anyone in foul trouble
for a 2-point win.
It also took WSU losing their starting five their starting big man for half the game.
Yeah, who has been their best post presence.
And against a team who could very much be exploited in that regard.
Yep.
And then you also had Noah missed a pretty crucial stretch when he rolled his ankle, and like I said, I think that impacted his defense a little bit at the end. He didn't seem to be. Maybe he was just getting tired, but maybe he just wasn't sticking with Ethan Thompson the way he was, because he was totally shutting him down.
Yeah.
For the rest of the game, like completely shutting him down. I guess Ethan Thompson was in a little bit of foul trouble, but honestly, a lot of his fouls are pretty obvious. It was just a bonkers. It's so frustrating. It's frustrating to talk about again. But.
You just wish they would have won because, again, you're coming off the win against Oregon. You're feeling great. I mean, also a win over Washington. So much was made of Kyle Smith's record against Northwest Schools. And then, you watch that game. And again, I didn't watch it, but the vibe that I've gotten from talking with you and everybody else who watch it and just looking at the stats is that, look, I think it's pretty clear at this point that WSU is a better team than Oregon State. We beat them once. It took an absolutely absurd intervention from the officials to win this one as well. You look at the peripherals, the other, we got the 4 factors, right? Shooting, turnovers, offensive rebounding, free throws. You look at the other 3, the shooting was nothing special. Just 52% effective field goal percentage, which weights, 3-pointers, extra so that we
which is more than we want to give, but
right,
it's
more than you want to give, but it's not
something you can't overcome.
It's not crazy good. It's maybe a little above average. And then, but their turnovers, they turned it over a ton. They didn't get hardly any offensive rebounds, but they went to the free throw line a million times and had a free throw rate that, by the way, if you were wondering, so we said they're pretty good at free throw rate normally, right? They get to the line more than anybody else. So 72 was their free throw rate in that game. Next closest this year was 59. So this was both of the results, both their free throws and our lack of free throws were extreme outliers, both of them. And that was the difference in a 2-point game. And it's that's the stuff that drives coaches nuts. Cause you're you play well enough to win. And then this thing that's really, truly kind of out of your control, you can't follow through on. So, I mean, there's obviously no time for them to mope. They've got, basically they've got 5 games in 8 days, 9 days, something like that. Yeah. Because of a scheduling quirk with moving the second game against Washington up to make room for something else. And so they got, this is a really big stretch here. Next 5 games at home. And that's what sucks about this. You just kind of go, oh, they had a chance to win, their 3rd game in a row on the road. That's
come into the stretch 5 and 6 with a chance to maybe come out of the stretch on the positive.
Yeah.
Or at least even,
or at least 500. Yeah.
But now it's just such an uphill battle. And it's frustrating too, because, I guess it'd be 5. They would have been 5 and 7, not 5 and 6. But still, it's frustrating too. Look at Oregon State's now 6 and 5 in it, 2.5 games clear of them in the standings. You're really, come on. Oregon State's. We were talking about it. If WSU would have played the Pac-12 schedule that they've had, might be a little different.
Yep.
Primarily because
it'll probably be different by the end of the year.
Yeah, because WSU will get Cal at home, like Oregon State has had. Yep. WSU might get Arizona State at home. They left that last weekend open to reschedule games. I who knows?
So Oregon State, by the way, Oregon State plays 5 of their final 8 away, and their 3 home games are Utah, Colorado, and Oregon. So.
Yeah, they're tough.
Those might. I mean, it would not be crazy if they ended the season. So they just got whooped by Colorado after playing us. They played last night, Monday night. Got destroyed by Colorado in Boulder, and then so now they go to Arizona State, Utah, Colorado. I mean, they play Cal, but Cal's away. So I mean, there's a decent chance they go something like 2 and 6 over their final 8. Like that would not be crazy. So
Oh yeah, I thought it was pretty funny that they were talking on the broadcast. Obviously, you didn't hear this. Like Oregon State's trying to get in that top 4, and I'm like, this team is not getting in the top 4. Like, get the fuck out of here. Are
it's
you
USC,
watching
UCLA, Colorado, Oregon? That's your top 4. That's easy.
Yeah, like that's like they're trying to get in the top 4 so they get the bye. I'm like, okay, like that's not going to happen. They'd also have to hop Arizona and Stanford to get to the top 4.
Yeah.
So
whatever.
That's not going to happen. I mean, any hopes of that probably got squashed by this getting obliterated by Colorado.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a incredibly frustrating result.
Yeah.
But let's look ahead to this three games in 5 days that they have coming up.
Quick previews.
Yeah, so we've already played all 3 of these teams, of course, and with 1 really fun win and 2 frustrating losses. Let me pull it up again. So we got UCLA on Thursday. So UCLA is missing their bigs in the last game, and I don't know what the extent of those injuries were. They were without Riley, I know. And that would be huge for WSU if he was out. So he has a sprained ankle. Jalen Hill was also he's their other big. He's their backup big. Both didn't play against USC. Definitely hurt them against USC. They got whooped. USC obviously is one of the biggest teams in the country. But honestly, if they're missing 1 or 2 of those guys, because they rotate pretty much. They don't play at the same time much. So if one of them can play, they're going with a 6'6" guy probably. In that position. Like, so they're going like 6'6" across the board. From like 2 to 5 or 6'6" guys. Obviously in the first game, they shot nuclear. And that buried WSU earlier. They literally just would not miss, and that was incredibly frustrating. I know you were super high on them after that. I don't know how you're feeling about them now.
Results are a little different now.
Yeah.
They kind of okay. So I mean, they at the time they were coming off an incredible offensive performance, also against Arizona in the game before. They'd had some pretty big offensive performances against Ohio State, against Utah, against San Diego. Like, it just kind of looked like, okay, this might legitimately be just a really good offensive team. They followed up, us, which was, their highest offensive efficiency of the season, with another good showing against Washington. And since then, it's been bad. Like,
I mean, but you could even say just overall that only beating Washington by 5 at home was a bad sign.
Yeah, true. But I think that had more to do with their defense, which has been sort of up and down all season. So no huge shock there. What's been surprising me since is that their offense has sort of, because I mean, they against us, they looked like it wasn't just the ridiculous shooting, which was annoying and unfortunate, and kind of like we said, it's like you can be both. You can both play bad defense and get a bit unlucky, right? And kind of all of that happened in that game. But you sort of felt like, okay, this is a team that's got weapons everywhere. They've got an interior scoring presence with Riley. Like, you just feel like, okay, like maybe they're not going to shoot like this all the time, but this is a really good ass team, right? Well, then again, Washington, they kind of take a tick down, but the last 4. Man, they were under a point per possession against Cal. Right? They were barely over a point per possession against Stanford, which is not terrible in the sense that Stanford's a really good defensive team.
Yeah, like a top 10 quality defense.
But still, that's given what they were doing and the people they were just shredding. I mean, okay. And then, again, under a point per possession against Oregon State.
Yeah, WSU is just 1 point per possession against Oregon State.
Yeah.
And WSU has no good offense.
Exactly.
You guys have a good offense.
Exactly. So to be under a point per possession against Oregon State and then be just more or less completely manhandled by USC. And again, USC, really good defense too. So, there's that. But
and then they were playing two kind of, they played 2 6'9" 5s that had Kenneth Nwuba and Mac Etienne. who have not played much all year.
Yeah.
And so they were running with them. Taking out Cody Riley, who's a very good offensive big man, and then Jordan Hill is just, very athletic and can finish around the basket. Suddenly you got these two guys who did not perform all that well. I mean, Etienne was good at finishing, but he turned the ball over a bunch. I can just tell you right now, looking at this profile, this is a very athletic player. I don't even have to see him. Like he played 27 minutes. He was 4 or 5 on twos. Had 4 defensive rebounds, 4 turnovers, and 2 blocks, and a steal. I bet this dude can jump. I bet he's quick. Yep. He's 6'9", 220.
That's a good guess.
Yep. So I bet that'll be an interesting matchup with FA. But yeah, so we talked about them. They got all those wings. They're like wing heavy, and just the sheer number of shooters that they have. Someone can get hot. Hopefully, we get a little bit of regression to the mean continuing in Pullman. And then really just, and we'll say it 3 times in all 3 of these games, just need Isaac to get back to what he's been doing.
Yep.
And because WC is never going to win a game against a Pac-12 team when he goes 1 of 10 from twos and whatever. So it's, I think KenPom has him 31% chance. It feels about right.
I think it's better than that even.
You think so?
And here's why. So number one, they've lost their last 2 games on the road. Their offense seems to have a tougher time on the road. So in their last, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 road games. Okay, so they've played 5 road games since the new year. Their points per possession were 1.01, 1.24, 0.96, 1.04, and 0.77. So one really good game against Arizona, and then everything else has been mediocre to bad on the road. So you got to kind of think maybe there's a little something there. The defense also tends to be a little bit worse on the road, it looks like. So I think I really like our chances second time around. I mean, we all know Kyle Smith's a really good coach. I like our chances to make adjustments. And look, we were shorthanded. We were banged up. We were not anything like full strength in that game.
Well, and we might be getting it the other way this time, just as a some karmic payback here.
And it's kind of like that all year, right? Like every team's got their shit. Every team's got guys they're gonna miss. Every team, whatever. Right? I mean, Ryan Rapp didn't play in that first game. That was when DJ Rodman was out too. Okay.
I think it's very clear that DJ Rodman is an important player on this team.
And by the way,
forgot about him.
We talked about that last week. We were like, maybe you move him into the starting lineup. That's what they did, and turned out pretty awesome.
He hit threes, man. That's all. That's what. And he played D. He hit threes. He played D. He of course missed almost the entire second half against Oregon State with a broken nose, but then came back and hit a bunch more threes. So that's why Yaki got pulled. He wasn't hitting those shots.
Yep.
And so if you can get DJ, and we had said they have pretty much the same offensive game at this point. So if you get DJ to hit those threes, I mean, play that guy. I think their defense is probably a wash. But yeah, so hopefully, let's get DJ still cooking from 3. Yaki maybe can get back in the groove.
Yep.
He hit 1 this weekend. So.
Hit 1 against Oregon.
Yeah, it barely nudged in there, but it was.
And even though he missed all 3 against Oregon State, but again, I didn't watch the game, so you can tell me. But just looking at his stat line, he had a rebound, had a couple of assists, only 1 turnover. That's. I mean, you want him to hit a 3 or 2 because that's sort of his game, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like maybe he was killing him like he has.
Yeah, I feel like coming off the bench maybe gives him a little bit different perspective on things about what he can do, and maybe he has a little more energy, plays because he doesn't feel like he has to play 35 minutes and all that stuff. So it might work for him. We see it in soccer all the time, obviously. Yep. So honestly, if Cody Riley doesn't play, I feel very good about this. Same with Jalen Hill. If those two guys are going to miss again, or one of them even, that's huge for WSU. I'd really like them to see them take advantage of that size discrepancy. Even when those guys are playing, like WSU has a huge size advantage in this matchup. So,
but still, Ken Palm says 1-3. That's pretty good.
I mean, and Tiger Campbell is not going to hit a bunch of freaking every shot he shoots again. Like
he's not going to hit all 10 10-footers.
Yeah. A guy with a 46% effective field goal percentage on the year just suddenly makes every goddamn shot in the world. So this is definitely, like, I know if you're just a casual fan, you're like, they lost by 30 points last time. There's no fucking way. But I honestly think this is going to be probably a close game, close-ish game.
I'd be really surprised if it wasn't.
Yeah, and it's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if both teams are under one. That'd be good for WSU, honestly, if both teams were under 1 point per possession. That would be better for WSU than it would be for UCLA. So let's move on to USC.
I don't know.
I mean, last time out we were like, if you just told me the scores of both the games, I would have thought that UCLA was the one they lost by 8 and USC was the one they lost by 30.
Yeah.
Because USC is just anything WSU does well, USC does better.
Right.
Evan Mobley is insane. Like he has such an NBA skill set offensively already. Just his post move, his moves in the paint.
Yep.
He's very smooth, very athletic. Just a very savvy shot blocker.
Yeah. He's gonna be the number one pick, right?
Yeah, probably.
I think that's the idea.
And then he's getting better and better too. Like WSU did get him in a bit of foul trouble the first time around. That'd be great if they did that again. So,
that would be really great.
So WSU surprisingly was very good inside against USC last time. So it'd be cool if honestly we don't know. One factor that we haven't really talked about is we don't know if Deshaun Jackson is going to be playing.
It sounds like he is. Kyle Smith basically made it sound like it was going to be fine.
Okay, good.
At his press conference, so who knows if that's gamesmanship or what, but he tends to be. I mean, he has tended to be pretty straight shooting on that stuff. So I think it sounds like the expectation is that Jackson's going to play. Which
I think to beat USC, you're going to have to rain down from threes and hope and pray they miss more than they should of just random shots, and really going to have to. I'd be tough to beat him without Deshaun. But yeah, hopefully he can play. They just have so many players that can score.
Yeah.
On top of on top of Evan Mobley, who honestly doesn't even have to shoot that much to affect the game in the way he does.
Yep.
Just offensive. Him and his brother both offensive rebounding, absolutely murder people. And then they bring Chavez Goodwin off the bench, who just is a relentless offensive rebounder. So you just have 3 of those guys that you're going to have to box out, and then there's the shooters on the outside. You got Peterson, and 80, however you say his name. I can, I've watched him play a million times. I still can never remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're a very good team. But one thing we've talked about is they're pretty goddamn inconsistent, which is kind of typical of Andy Enfield. I
have no idea how they lost to Oregon State, man.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't know how we hung with them like we did, honestly, right before that. We sort of
came back in the second half, right? I mean, that's, it wasn't really close in the first half, and then we kind of clawed back a little bit in the second half. But, I don't know that we ever,
and they weren't really that good against Cal.
They
weren't that good against Cal either. So on the road, maybe they're a little, a little less good. As most teams are, but hopefully you just got to kind of, maybe we'll catch them on that off day like Oregon State caught them.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Yeah. By the way, we went on an 11-0 run in the second half to close to within 73-69 with about 4.5 minutes to go. And
I remember Noah hit a banked 3. We had one of our banked 3s go our way,
and we raised our win percentage from 1% to 6%, trailing by 4 points with 4.5 minutes to go. So, the more you know.
The more you know. All right,
Yeah.
so
I don't
last
like our
game
chances in that game, but whatever.
Last game that's probably, I don't like our chances either. But hey, I didn't think we were going to beat Oregon either. So
there you go.
I didn't think we were going to beat Oregon. I thought we were going to beat Oregon State. So what the fuck do we know?
We don't know. That's
well and
established.
Then another game on Monday. We're welcoming UW into town. UW will be escaping the snowy Western Washington to get over to the clear skies of Pullman.
Yeah.
Although maybe the snow might be moving that way by then. Although Pullman's weather is way different. It doesn't make it all the way over there. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they beat the shit out of UW, and UW is playing not so good. They only seem to play their best against Oregon, and then the two that we call them the Arizona Ernie Kent games, the Colorado Utah wins.
Right.
But yeah, WSU was just so much better in so many ways the first game. And just to be at home, let's assume you're not going to get as hot a shooting from Bonton, but maybe you will. I think you're going to get a game from Noah against UW. That's a given. FA loved playing against UW. You know, their bigs aren't very good, and they play that zone that leaves them some space. And Deshaun had a good game. If Deshaun can play, of course. Yaki was like a nothing burger against UW, and they still beat him by 15. And we know that wasn't even that close. But again, fuck man, Quade Green's a hell of a player. You never know what he's going to do. You never know if one of those guys like Hamir Wright or Raekwon Battle or Marcus Shahonis are just going to hit 400 threes. So there's always that's annoying factors. Yep,
that's definitely
because they shoot a lot of threes, and they have some guys that can get super hot from three.
Basically,
and then Quade Green is just a very good player.
They are basically Ernie Kent status at this point, right? Like
they don't play much defense.
They don't play much defense, and they just play the 3-point lottery. You know,
oh my God, Mike Hopkins, dude. Mike Hopkins, man, that's not territory you want to be in, dude.
Well, they are, by the way, they are also ranked 164th right now. I mean, that's Ernie Kent territory.
That's Ernie Kent territory.
Like
I would be pretty disappointed in Kyle Smith at this point, even at this point in his tenure, if he lost 164th ranked team at home.
Yes. Absolutely.
If WSU loses this game, and they could, it's not WSU isn't.
Of course they can.
You know, WSU's 115th or whatever. You know, they're not the greatest team in the world, but
it's a 1 in 4. It's a 1 in 4 chance.
It's funny though when these two teams played each other. What was it? 2 weeks ago? Not even 10 days ago. What day is it? I don't fucking. 10 days ago. 9
10
days
ago, basically.
Yeah. They were 137 and 138, and so just the how bad UW has been in that time, and then the two beating UW and beating Oregon, and then basically, but so I would be pretty disappointed if they lost this game.
I'd be extremely disappointed.
Yeah, you always have the extra bit of nervousness because it's UW, but UW, they're just not very good. No one should lose to them at home at this point.
And they're traveling.
No one in the conference.
They're traveling. They will have just come off playing USC and UCLA,
and they got to get they got to get on the plane and come on over and
on a Monday.
I think it's better to be the team at home when you're playing the stretch than the team that's traveling, which is UW. So at least playing this crappy stretch of so many games in so few days, at least they're at home and it's not a road set. Definitely gotta get that one. Would love if they picked off UCLA this weekend too.
Yeah, if we can get two of these, that's super awesome.
Just any two, but I mean, if you're gonna get USC and UCLA, you better fucking get UW too. Come on, like,
You would think so. But that's, we also thought, hey, you just beat Oregon, you're probably going to beat Oregon State too. I mean, these things happen.
So we got to beat UW to keep talking that shit.
That's true.
Like,
we need that. We need this.
Yeah.
We need this. We need him to go 4-0, just like Tony Bennett did in his first 4 games.
Yes.
Yeah. There we go. Hey, should we take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break. We'll come back and talk women's hoops. Big win for them.
And we're back.
All right. Well, we got to talk about the beer. I know we got a lot to talk about today, but we got to talk about the beer. This has been a long time in the making.
Yes,
Holy crap, Jeff! We're already at an hour.
I know. We tried. We tried.
I did not think we were talking for that long about the basketball team.
This
but
was
whatever.
like last week. The roles are reversed. Like last week, I was like, "Oh my god, we've talked for an hour," and then you were like, "I knew it was long." And like this one, I'm like, I've been watching it, going, "Oh my god, we're talking for a long time," and you're like, "Oh wow, time flies."
Okay, so the beer this week, we are drinking the same beer. So I know what you're drinking. I had mentioned it on a podcast months back.
Yeah.
And then I went and tried it, and I tracked it down. I tracked it down right away, so it's kind of old by now. But it's not too bad. It's from December.
Still tastes great.
It's about 2 months old, which it's pretty common to drink it. I think that falls in the double IPA range.
Yep.
I'm not big of a snob as I used to be, but it's tasting very good. So what we are drinking is Alchemist Heady Topper.
Ooh. The Moby Dick of IPAs.
Yeah. Well, if you're talking 2012, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely make a lot more now, but it's still not easy to get. But I got it from they ship some to Southern California and Bay Area, and one of the places down there will sell it online and ship to Washington. So I just kind of monitored them, and it was fortuitous. Like right when I was looking, they got a shipment, so I was able to pick some up.
Nice.
Only 2 cans. Luckily, they usually do 1, so I was really happy I got 2.
I am too.
So I finally you were able to come pick it up. I left you a little. I gave you a little gift.
Yeah,
pack
you did.
Of beers.
Yes, you did.
But yeah, what are you thinking about this this Heady Topper?
Yeah, so this beer was sort of like my gateway beer into like great beer.
Into IPAs.
Yeah.
Great beer, yeah.
Where it was like, at that time was, and this is when you're living in Vermont and, so we're not like hanging out and drinking beer a whole bunch and whatever. And so it's just like, okay, this is, I'm sort of starting to get into drinking, more beers, more craft beers. Like, okay, I'm expanding my horizons, right? I'm moving beyond Alaskan Amber and all that good stuff, right? And you gave this to me, and I was just like I remember the first time I had it, my mind was blown. Like it was just, I was like, oh my god, like this tastes so good. Like I can't believe this. And so it's interesting to come back to it, however many years later. I haven't had one in probably 5 years, right? I think the last time I had one, you brought one back from Vermont when you moved back home, like something like, so whatever that was, 5, 6, 7 years ago, whatever that was. And so
5 years ago.
5 years ago. Okay. So yeah, so that's about when it was, I think. And so to have it now is just like, it's so interesting. Like it's obviously still a really great beer. But it's kind of crazy to like taste it compared to, so many beers that have basically tried to imitate it or imitate that style over the years. And it's delicious. Like it's still, it's got that kind of citrusy front end with a nice, kick of bitterness on the back end. It's still just as tasty as it was. It doesn't blow me away the way it used to, but still a completely, totally delicious beer.
Yeah, and this beer was really kind of a precursor to the haze. Like it's hazy. It's not like, but so you talked about when I told you I poured it. I have a Heady Topper glass like that I've had for since I lived in Vermont. It's got the little Heady Topper logo on it and stuff. And so you said, well, it says right on the can, drink from the can.
But so people, by the way, we were joking beforehand because Craig said he had poured his beer, and I'm like, but the can says to drink from the can, and so we were joking about that. That's where this started.
So I wanted to save it for the podcast. So I tell them why I still pour it. So when Alchemist Heady Topper first started canning, and because they made this beer for many years, that they had so they started as like a brew pub in Waterbury. That brew pub got flooded twice. They were like, fuck this. They moved up the hill a little bit, just started being just like a canning only brewery, which was pretty rare back in 2011 when they started doing this. Because I remember when I lived in Vermont, I had no knowledge of the beer, but I just saw it popping up whenever the shipments would come in at like, the beer store I would go to. And so I would get it just because the can looked cool. I literally just got it the first time. A 4-pack. I remember it was like, it was like $16. And at that time, that was like $16 for a 4-pack, which is like pretty common these days for like any IPAs from a craft brewery. But I was like, okay, well, I'm still going to try it. And it just blew my mind with like the grapefruit and like all this stuff. Like it was like nothing I had ever had in my entire life. And then now it's like a lot of IPAs are in this vein. And it's very influential beer. It was definitely a heavily sought after beer. The funny thing in Vermont, it was really distributed to like a 35-mile radius. So you could get it pretty well in that rate, especially you could drive to the brewery and get it. So like it'd be like people at backyard barbecues were just slamming this down, and it's an 8% double IPA in a 16-ounce can. Like you're just getting shit faced. Like, it'd be like bros, like frat bros. It'd be like drink a Heady. Like like Heady was like the PBR can, like the kind of the hipster style can, but people were just getting hammered. But for a while, it was like I had these when I moved to Stowe, which is near Waterbury. But I had some friends who ran I became friends because I shopped there so much, and I would just go and just hang out with them and chat with them. But that's how I made friends, because they own the shop in Waterbury, a craft beer cellar, if you're ever around in Vermont. They joked because people would just call for Heady all the time, Heady, Heady, Heady. And so they started, like, they had a code word for it, which was shipyard, because before Heady, it was like... around pumpkin beer season, Shipyard had a beer called Pumpkinhead, and they didn't carry like any Shipyard beers, but they would carry Pumpkinhead just because like people would go crazy for Pumpkinhead, and so I would just come in and I would joke about like, do you have any Shipyard? And they'd be like, yeah, we got some in the cooler, 1 4-pack or whatever. It's like that was the Heady Topper, the Shipyard, because it was so crazy. You'd have like every little shop in this 35-mile radius, like if you sold any sort of provisions, you probably got Heady distributed, and they had a list of everywhere they got Heady distributed on their website, and they even had a list of what days they would get it. And so people would just call if they got on Thursday. You were just like little tiny Vermont town, like corner store, and you got Heady Topper. You'd have like everyone in a 100-mile radius would be calling, "Do you have it? Do you have it? Do you have it?" And so like I would talk to some small shop owners that were just like, it's we don't make enough money like on the beer for this like because people come in and they buy the 4-pack, the 1 4-pack they're allowed of Heady, and then they leave and they don't buy anything else in the store because they thought, oh, if we have it, then people come in and buy it. I talked to a lot of shop owners be like, no, they just come in, and then if we're out of it, we try to suggest other beers, and people are like, no, nope, I just want Heady, and then they leave. Because people would drive from Boston and New York and just be like, just drive around trying to score as many 4-packs of Heady. When I would go to the brewery, I'd visit my friends I had friends in Boston that I went to grad school with, and they moved back, and I would come like to a party there, and I'd just bring a case of Heady, and I was like God to them. They're like, oh my God, like we got Heady Topper at this party. Yeah, but it's a wild beer. So the drink from the can thing, go back to that. I honestly think they put that on there is because people weren't used to like the haziness of the beer back then.
Yeah.
And it threw people off. And so they just told people to drink from the can because then they wouldn't see the hazy and they wouldn't be thrown off by that. Because really, truly, I would encourage you not to drink it from the can. It tastes better out of a glass.
Well, it's funny. I mean, it says on it, like, oh, quite simply, to ensure a delightful hop experience, the act of pouring it in a glass smells nice, but it releases the essential hop aromas that we work so hard to retain. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I poured it, and it,
that doesn't make any sense to me, honestly.
No, it doesn't. So yeah,
it
might be with you.
Yeah. Open up the beer by pouring it, and then you get the hop aroma that way.
Yeah, and
because you can't smell the beer when you're drinking out of a can.
I mean, there are still loads of hops here. I am not. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, look, I didn't drink it out of the can, so maybe there's been a reduction in hops, but I don't think so. So, still delicious, man.
One thing they say is so drinkable, it's scary. It's like, if you compare this to something like the hazy 8% double IPAs now, this is like bitter compared to that.
It's way bitter compared to that.
Yeah, like it's definitely less bitter than the old school double IPAs used to be, but this one is like, but when it came out, it was like, oh my God, this is so drinkable at 8%. And now it's like, oh, I don't know. This is more what I like now. I've gotten back to like a little more bitter. But we got to stop talking about the beer.
Yeah.
Alchemist Heady Topper, check it out.
If you can if you can get your hands on one.
Yeah. So we just under 10. We got it. All right. Let's talk about women's hoops. Huge win. What a game.
Yep.
On Friday.
Yep.
Friday afternoon, I was working, in quotation marks. The noon game, had it up on my my second screen. What a fun game. Charlize Ledger Walker is a fucking legend. Like, good God. 28 points, game-winning 3 with 40 seconds left, and just iced it with free throws. And defense,
she's so cold, dude.
And like you get to the end of these games and you're like, maybe Charlize is just gonna make plays, and she definitely did against UCLA. And it's like she shot it quick in the shot clock to get a 2-for-1, which I love. Like this team, because our men's team doesn't really do it, but Cami Etheridge has this team. They go for 2-for-1s every time.
They have more opportunities because they play quarters, so it's a little.
Yes, they didn't do it once, and it was kind of surprising, but I think it was more for lack of opportunities. But yeah, I like how they go 2-for-1. They were going 2-for-1. Charlize hits that big 3, a deep 3, to take the lead, 64-63, and then they didn't give that lead up. Played some good had some great defensive possessions to end the game, and what a win! First win over a top 5 program in history, like in the history of WSU women's basketball. What a milestone! Like they're ticking some milestones, and really this win just puts them right on track to make that tournament if they can just, as we said last week, just keep stacking wins. And it was just a blast to watch. One of my favorite games of the year, and I'm gonna if we ever have like a top games of the year, this one will be near the top no matter what happens in any of the other sports. Like, it was just such a blast to watch.
Yeah, and it didn't feel fluky either. It wasn't like some sort of crazy weird, outlier performance in any way, like say shooting 58 free throws, like Oregon State did. But they just, they're fun to watch, man. They're tough. They continue to fight. They continue to scrap. They tend to play hard-nosed defense. The defense kind of let them down a little bit against USC a couple days later. But, this game really, like you said, I think it's like they've got wins over. They've now got a win over UCLA. They've got a win over Arizona. And you just kind of go, unless they kind of crap the bed the rest of the way, you have to think that their spot in the tournament is fairly secure at this point, I would think. You never really know for sure, but there seems to be an understanding that the Pac-12 is really, 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 really good. And I think it's worth noting too, so they end up losing to USC a couple days later. But I think it's worth noting that, USC got some players back, couple players back for this game that didn't play the first time around against us. They are kind of surging, so that's not necessarily a bad loss, for whatever that's worth.
I think it'll look better by the end of the season.
So, the thing that you want to see is you want to, you want to have some good wins. You want to avoid bad losses. And one nice thing about playing in a ridiculously difficult league is there really are no bad losses, right? Or at the very least, there are very
well. They have some coming
there are
up.
Very
that could
few
definitely
that would qualify. Washington obviously would qualify as one. I think Utah is not very good too, right? So, those ones,
Cal, but they don't.
So losing
play
to
Cal.
either of them at home would obviously not be good, but there are fewer opportunities for bad losses, lots of opportunities to pick up good wins, and they've shown that they can hang with anyone not named Stanford, which is pretty much the same as everybody else that's any good. So, I think that's a feather in their cap. Right now, I think the latest projection on ESPN is them as a 9 seed. That's a shitty seed.
Yeah, because you got it. You
might play a Stanford,
Baylor,
somebody like Stanford in the second round, right?
South Carolina,
so you don't
Stanford.
You don't want
you
that,
play
but,
because
but they have an opportunity to improve that.
Yeah.
This next stretch in their schedule is certainly easier than the last stretch. So they theoretically have a chance to pile up some wins here against some teams that are very beatable. So
I mean, they need to if they just take care of it. Honestly, if they just take care of business those last 3, they'll probably be good. But it'd be really nice to split. Like I'll say, the USC game is incredibly frustrating and disappointing. But I think it's really truly one of those games. And they had some careless turnovers at the end that really hurt them. Some really tough calls from refs like that.
The 10 point. So for anybody who didn't watch it, the 10-point margin was not reflective of the game.
Is not. It was a 1 possession game for most, teams were going back and forth, I should say, like one would take a lead, the other would take a lead, one would take. So it was definitely, and WSU had closed the gap, and then basically WSU just went cold at the end, turned the ball over, didn't hit any shots, and then USC hit a couple shots and then hit a bunch of free throws to kind of extend the margin there. But yeah, and a one-handed running bank shot from 15 feet.
I know. I'm getting sick and tired of those kinds of shots, man. Very frustrating.
Yeah. And then some tic-tac fouls and but yeah, that was real frustrating. We can't play USC without in any
apparently
sport
not.
Apparently without just
apparently not.
Crazy shit. But yeah, so then this weekend they got Arizona again, at Arizona this time. Obviously it took OT to beat Arizona at home. If you get that one, you start moving up the seed lines if they can get that one. That was one of the disappointment of the USC loss is you can get out of that kind of bubble seed line, which is like 9 to 12, but if they can somehow beat Arizona again, who's a very good team, they would be in line for an even higher seed. But it'd be really nice if they could beat Arizona State. And then they got 3 at home, 3 very winnable games at home to close the season. So yeah, if like you said, if they just take care of business, if they just don't fall on their face, it really looks like they can break this, string of only once ever making it to the NCAA tournament in 1991. And they lost that first round game. So if they can get in, we'll be hoping to see them get their first win as well. So in the tournament. So they're so fun to watch. That made the USC game all the disappointing. They're causing me like heart pain, heart stress, like every single goddamn Sunday, I swear.
They are not for the faint of heart, man, at all.
No, every game is just, except for Stanford, like you said, every other game is just like down to the wire.
Well, and it's not even just that they're close. Like they like play, their offense kind of comes and goes, so that they'll have some stretches where they don't score a lot, and then they'll kind of explode. And they sort of rely on their defense to will themselves back into some games. And so you just end up like you sort of live and die with these offensive possessions where it's like, and they don't score and they don't score. It's basically like Bennett ball, except, they're not quite to that extreme tilted toward the defense. But it's similar in that you just have these interminable scoring droughts that just drive you nuts, and they miss a shot, and so you're just like, oh my God, this is it. This is where the game gets away from them, and then they come up with a defensive stop, and then they come down.
Yeah, they come up with like 5 stops in a row suddenly,
and then all of a sudden,
nowhere,
Charlize
like,
goes crazy
cool.
and makes a bunch of shots, and it's like, okay, they're right back in it.
And
yeah, they are fun to watch.
I was bummed because Lula Matuga had a huge game against at USC. I was bummed that they couldn't get the win. Obviously, Charlize had a huge weekend, 24 against USC. So Matuga had 25 and 10. She had a huge weekend. She had double-doubles in both games. But Charlize had 28 against UCLA, 24 against USC. But as you and I know, if you don't win both games, it's basically impossible to win Pac-12 Player of the Week. So Pilley from USC, who was big against WSU, but she had 16 points and 3 rebounds, while Charlize had 24 and 7 in the same game, and 4 rebounds, by the way. More rebounds than the taller. I don't know. I don't know if she's that much taller than Charlize.
But she's definitely a front court
body,
player.
But yeah, she's a front court player, very very skilled inside. She was very tough for us to guard, but also she did not. She played 28 minutes. She does not have the impact that Charlize Ledger-Walker had on that game. And then you're talking about Charlize won the game against UCLA, top 5 team, and she, for consolation, gets her 6th Pac-12 Freshman of the Week. So that puts her 2 away from the record. But come on, she should have been Pac-12 Player of the Week. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you give it to someone who averaged 17 points a game and like 4 rebounds. Like, get out of here with that. It's frustrating. Give her due. Other than just being the best freshman, it's like, she's kind of one of the best players, So yeah, she's fun to watch, and she'll be here for a while, so it's great.
We hope.
We hope another. So a program that's at a place where I'm sure Cammie Etheridge would like to get in a few years is volleyball, where they've been to the tournament 4 straight times, and really truly looking like they can make it a 5th this spring season as well. Is volleyball. They with Jen Greeny in charge, of course, who is a former Coug player who had her own bit of glory and now has led the team. And they have they had a very young team last year. Very surprising that they were able to make the tournament, because volleyball has this rotation of scholarships where they basically come out with 6 seniors that graduate and then have 6 freshmen come in. But their recruiting has just gotten so good that so now they have 6 very good sophomores, and then they have I called her Bethany last week, as Juliana Dalton, who's a very good freshman outside hitter. She's long and has this big winding hit of the ball. It's very intimidating, I'm sure, for the blockers. But they came through in that kind of glorious few days we had of Cougar sports and upset. I don't know if it's really an upset if 24 beats 18 at home, but upset number 18 UCLA to take the first of the weekend, but then dropped the follow-up game on Saturday. But still, to get a split from UCLA over the season is kind of what you would expect. So I think overall they're on track. They're 4-2, split Oregon, swept Arizona State, split UCLA. They seem on track to have another good season and contend for their 5th straight tournament, which is great.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, we talk a lot. We've mentioned many times about how this seems to be sort of the golden era of Cougar athletics. Just sort of success all over the place, success across the board. The men's basketball team I don't think is going to make the NCAA tournament this year, but we've had football making bowl games. The women's basketball team seems to be on track for a tournament. Obviously, volleyball's been there multiple times. Soccer, we're going to get to them in a sec. It's like it is it's pretty damn wild, man. It's very cool what Jen Greeny has built. And the reality is, if she was not an alum, maybe she'd be on her way to somewhere bigger and better at this point. But it seems like she enjoys being here. I mean, obviously, I don't have a hotline to Jen Greeny, but she's a Coug. Her husband's a Coug. Her husband Burdette, former baseball player, one of her assistant coaches. Like they are they are Pullman, and it's very cool to have them here. And so they're fun to watch, man. They're really good, and they fight against everyone, and it's kind of cool to be able to just kind of tune into any of these teams and see something awesome, like see something competitive, and they're not getting run off the floor by any of these teams by the league's best, which is very cool and very fun and very much unlike really any other time in my lifetime as a Coug. So it's very cool.
Well, I say, and then the volleyball team, they seem to have this knack of falling down early and coming back, which is again like a lot like the women's basketball team does too. But they fight, and they'll come back. They'll lose a set in like heartbreaking fashion, like against UCLA. In the win, they lost the third set, like a kind of a pivotal set, 26-24 after being up 24-20. So they had four. They had a bunch of match. It was 28-26. I think they in total had 7 set points in that set and lost. You gotta think, oh, they're wrecked. And then they come back and dominated the last 2 sets, like to win. So, that's how volleyball goes, but it's fun to watch. And Pia Timmer is a really fun player. Just check her out. She's kind of does everything on the floor. Usually is up one of the leaders in hitting, and then also digging and all the stats you can find. So yeah, they're fun, and you can I gotta give shout out to Steve Grubbs, who's like the hardest working man in Pullman right now. Just they got him, he does they got him calling the WSU live streams for volleyball and basketball, and then he'll have baseball coming up soon too. So he's a busy guy. So he was kind of the sound of my weekend. His interesting, I'll say, cadence and voice. So,
that's one way to put it. That is one way to put it.
Very classic. I'll say he's very classic baseball announcer sound, like voice that he's got there. So soccer, man. They were playing during the Super Bowl.
That was hilarious. I'm like sitting down watching the Super Bowl, and I've got a laptop on my lap.
I've got the laptop
as I'm watching the Super Bowl. One eye on the soccer game, one eye on the Super Bowl. Actually, I kind of maybe like 1.5 eyes on the soccer game and half an eye on the Super Bowl. But
yeah, that's probably fair.
They
I would agree with that.
Opened the season with a win, and Seattle U may not sound impressive, but Seattle U has been in the tournament more often than not over the last 5-6 years. So it's not a patsy that they opened with, and it was fun, man. They had so they scored their first goal pretty early in the game, and I didn't see the first goal. I was away from my computer for the first goal, so you can tell us more about that one.
Yeah, so it was a freshman. Let me get her name. Alyssa Gray. And,
who needs Trinity Rodman?
The goal
anyway?
Was another freshman forward. I said on Twitter, like if you would have told me, if we would all guessed like after this recruiting class that a freshman forward would score the first goal of the season. Yeah, of course, it's just not the freshman that you would think. But Alyssa Gray scores the first. Very, I would say, a brave finish. Like she, it was one of those where the goalie's coming. It's kind of a 50-50 ball. The goalie's coming in, charging in, going to slide. You're going to get decked, even if you make contact. But she got to the ball first. Sure enough, got leveled. and scored the goal. You love to see a striker do that, like to have the
Sell
guts
out
to
get the
do
goal.
that. Yep. Yeah, that's a striker right there. And then speaking of a striker mentality too, the second goal, man, like I'll let you that one was
I mean, it was
Elise Bennett.
Elise Bennett. It was kind of another hustle play, and I think it was really emblematic of the style that the Cougars play. They work their asses off all the time, and so they're talented. Don't get me wrong; like it's not a situation where they sort of overcome a talent deficit with their work ethic.
Yeah, you see like the 3 players drafted
like
in WSL, like
they
it's not
clearly have people who can play. But even going back to Morgan Weaver, right, who was drafted, number 2 overall, after her senior season. She scored a ton of goals. She was obviously very skilled, but just an unnatural ability to hustle all the time and chase down lost causes. And look, you and I watch a ton of soccer. Look, it's not every striker is willing to try and chase down every ball.
Yep.
Where it's like, well, I could empty the tank to try and chase that thing down. I might not get there. Do I really want to lose? Do I really want to sprint? Do I really want to bust a lung trying to chase that thing down? And WSU has just this work ethic of, we are going to run and run and run and run, and we are going to pressure you, and we are going to chase down balls. We're gonna chase down balls that might be 50-50 balls. Like, we are just gonna go. And that was Elise Bennett's goal, the go-ahead goal. Because in reality, Seattle U hadn't done a whole lot. They just happened to strike basically right after the beginning of the second half.
Yeah,
it was kind of crazy.
It was just kind of a a breakdown. It was a ball switched direction ball, like they crossed like deep ball across the field, caught a player. It was a heck of a finish.
It was a really nice finish.
But she had a lot of time to do it. I'll say that, but it still was very nice finish. It was top corner.
Basically caught the Cougs flat.
Impossible to save.
Right, caught the Cougs flat-footed coming out of the break, and they weren't quite ready, and then. Again, Elise Bennett, chases down this ball in the box, muscles the defender off the ball, and then the keeper kind of gets caught in no man's land. The keeper's kind of not really sure, should I stay back and play the shot? Should I come out and try to play the ball? And she kind of gets caught in between, and Bennett just kind of smacks it right over her, slots it in to the left side.
She did a nice little, she just, it's kind of a sliding attempt. She did very savvy finish.
Quality finish.
Just big win. I mean, that's a win that it's a resume. You're obviously gonna have your fair share of resume chances in conference play, but just to get this win, you get a resume win that's out of conference right away, and you're not going to have very many opportunities for that this season. Obviously, most of the schedule is going to be in conference play. But yeah, it's nice. They pick up where they left off. Obviously, they lost that national semifinal. That they were in the national semifinal the last time they played the game. They played a game, which is absolutely nuts. But a game which they had a lead, by the way, if you all remember. But and then they step up. They lose Morgan Weaver. They lose another forward that was supposed to be, generational talent, and Trinity Rodman never plays a game, but they still, they have attackers that can finish, and they got defense, they got a good midfield for sure. So I'm looking forward. I hope we get streams like we've had for the other sports. I would just get streams for all the games, because I've been really enjoying in this pandemic just watching all these Coug sports.
It has been, and it was like, even just on Super Bowl Sunday, I was like, this is awesome. Sit down, watch a little Coug soccer. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I needed that after the women's basketball team lost. I'm like, I'm in a bad mood now. They picked me
I know.
up.
That was not a good start to my Super Bowl Sunday, but. So let's see. All right, so we got Cougar basketball Thursday. We got volleyball's also on Thursday. They play Colorado at 4:00, and you can live stream that with the WCU live stream. Women's basketball on Friday, right? And soccer
And they're at Arizona.
Yes. And that's a big one. If you can win that one. Now, Arizona's fallen off a little bit since we beat them, but again, if you win that one on the road, again, that's just another feather in the cap. Soccer plays on Friday against Eastern. There is not a link. There's not a link in the schedule for a stream. So
I'd say the best. I mean, and plus it's harder to set up the outdoor streams and stuff and all that. Like soccer is
but they've
much
done
more
that
difficult
over the years, though. So I don't know.
Yeah, so I hope, but I the best thing to do to watch for those streams is to follow their Twitter accounts. They always tweet the streams.
Agreed.
But yeah, so I guess we got one football item that we need to.
Yeah, I guess so. Guess we have to.
This year's starting quarterback and freshman Jaden DeLora. I'm sure anyone that listens to this podcast is already that you're not learning this. Of course, got arrested for suspicion of DUI this week, and that's the big news. It's a real bummer. Kind of makes you wonder about how long this suspension is. Indefinite suspension is what they say. We got spring ball coming up. Obviously, they brought in a grad transfer quarterback to compete, so makes you wonder about what that quarterback position. Obviously, the thing you said in your article about it, and that you should say, is very grateful that no one was hurt. If he was indeed, driving impaired, and glad no one was around, and glad he's safe, and glad everyone else is safe. And so we'll talk about the football aspect. But what does this kind of do? I know you wrote in your article. What does that kind of do when thinking about him and the quarterback situation, the team situation going forward?
This hasn't happened necessarily just in a little isolated bubble either. Obviously he tested positive for COVID. Now, look, people catch COVID. Lots of people catch COVID. This is not necessarily a COVID shaming sort of thing. But at the same time, there are definitely rumors about things he was doing that may have led to him, contracting COVID, things that maybe were not totally maybe the best decisions for the quarterback of the football team in the middle of his season. Basically things that involved where he was hanging out and who he was hanging out with and those kinds of things. So, nothing that's been solidly verified with reporting, but also, kind of that would kind of make sense. I mean, basically things that that freshmen do when they're on a college campus, and so one of the things I said was in the article was basically like, he is a freshman, and you do understand that, and look, I remember what I was like when I was a freshman. I totally get it. Like I 100% get it, but not every freshman is the face of the football program. Right. Like that's the difference. And so when someone is the face of the football program, then all of a sudden you kind of start asking, well, should he be the face of the football program? Is he actually ready for that? There's a lot of weight that goes along with that. And I sort of imagine that leading up to last season, maybe there was an opportunity for a lot of that because, in leading up to the season, there was no quarterback named, right? So there were, Cooper and Cruz were both returning, but were not necessarily in a position of leadership in that respect. And then DeLora shows up. Now he's, the freshman. He's going to try and win the job in camp, but in any workouts or anything that lead up to that, he's not necessarily the leader guy. Well, now, you go, okay, well, he started all 4 games. He was slated to not start one because of COVID, but never came to fruition, right? Because that game ends up getting canceled anyway. So now he's started your 4 games. He is the presumed starter. Now, obviously things can change, but you go, okay, well, if a guy started 4 games as a true freshman, you got to figure he's got a leg up, right, on starting the next season. So Now he's in a little different position as a team leader. QBs like it or not, are leaders. And, to be honest, that's been a little bit of the knock on, say, Cameron Cooper, right? Like maybe not enough of a vocal leader for that position or to the coach's liking. So all that to say, you're the guy, and then you go out and get arrested for DUI, which is a pretty colossal failure of judgment, right? Like, it's the guy, not to make excuses for anybody driving drunk, but there's really, 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 really no excuse in Pullman, right? Where literally everything is walkable, right? I mean, if you had to, you could walk from campus out to CCN if you had to, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. It's like, so to be driving drunk, there's really no excuse. And you got to wonder if at some point you kind of go, does that necessarily play into how he's looked at, and maybe like, maybe we need to back off on, throwing our lot in with this guy, at least for a little while.
Yeah. And we'll see how it plays out going into spring ball and everything. And we'll see how, what happens with him legally and everything as well. But yeah, obviously not news that you want to see. Don't want to get in that Fulmer Cup standings so early. Yeah, man. So I think we did it. We talked about everything. I don't even know how long it was because we had to restart at some point. Wait, now I know. I just looked at the clock. We're under 2 hours though, so we're good. Yeah, so okay. All right, man. So if you're wanting to hear more of our ramblings, obviously Coug Center is a place. And then I'm at the Craig Powers on Twitter. Jeff is at Pod VS Everyone. It says Jeff probably, which it really means Jeff definitely. But we're kind of probability guys, so we rarely say definitely.
We're trying not to speak
Jeff
in
probably.
absolutes.
It's 99.9% probability, but it's probably.
But
Jeff.
you have the keys to that account. You could.
I do have the keys.
Post
it's
there
on
if you
my phone. I could switch over. Yep. And then, send us an email. I didn't get any this week at podcastvseveryone@gmail.com. Questions, comments, topics, whatever. We're not really needing topics right now, honestly.
My gosh.
Just talking about the sports that are being played is enough.
Almost feels like we need to have two episodes or something.
Well, when you have the fall sports are happening in the spring, along with the spring sports,
there's that.
Yeah, we're gonna have baseball starting up too. It's gonna be a lot, and we're just paying more attention. I'm paying more attention to a lot of these other sports than I ever have in my life. So it's good. You're gonna hear about them. I'm not gonna waste that brain power. I'm
enjoy
using.
this right now.
Yeah. Well, my heady topper's gone,
Mine too.
and I'm sad. I did bring a second beer, but I never cracked it. I guess
I'm
we're
in the
just
same
in the
place.
zone. Yeah. All right, man.
Go Cougs, Craig. Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.